Guys, we live in a world that just takes care of us. We have so many conveniences. Technology is just incredible. It is a great time to be alive. One of the problems, though, is a lot of times we become so dependent on this technology. And so we kind of go through life kind of just going, and we're not really thinking about problems that could happen. And one of the things that I've talked about previously is a personal SHTF. It doesn't have to be a apocalypse. It doesn't have to be, you know, even a regional disaster. It can be something that happens to you just one day out of the blue, affects no one else. And so recently I had a day kind of like that. Now, this wasn't an SHTF day, but it was a day that, because I had been prepared, and not totally prepared for what happened, but because I had some things put back, I was able to improvise and I was able to get through a really tough situation. Now, many of you know that recently I bought a Hummer H3, and before I bought it, I went and took it to my mechanic, who I've had for years, and he checked it out thoroughly and everything was good to go. But to give you a little backstory, I started on a trip up to Charlotte, North Carolina from Greenville, South Carolina. So it's about a 2-hour trip. I got a couple of miles up the road and realized that I had not put the Hummer on my insurance. We had already talked to him and called him, but I was already 2 weeks out, and it just hit me. And so I turned around, went back to my insurance company. When I get there, they had changed some of the software, and the guy was having a lot of trouble getting this on our insurance. In fact, it took me over an hour there at the insurance company. We got it settled, and I decided, I looked at my car and I said, you know, this thing needs a bath. And so I took it through a car wash. Well, one of the problems, and I didn't even realize it at the time, I did notice that there was something going on. It was one of those automated car washes where you go through. And there were some noises that I heard, and I was a little concerned. I kind of looked it over, but I thought no big deal. So I'm about an hour out from Charlotte, driving down Highway 85, and started hearing this really loud banging noise on the roof of my car. There was a really nice light bar on the top of the roof, and you can see the small pieces here, and you can see the wire. But this entire light bar started banging right here on my Hummer. I mean, it was making a horrible racket. And so I got out and grabbed some paracord, because I didn't really have anything else I could use. And I tied down one side, because one side you can see where these are breaking right here. But it looked like the other side was fine. So I went ahead and I tried to tie it down. It was a very difficult, there wasn't really a good way to do it. I ended up putting it partially on my rearview mirror. Now, obviously it didn't hold, and I heard this really loud crack and looked in my rearview mirror, and I could see that light bar going way up in the air, shooting across into some field. And so I just kept driving, and there was no way to find it. Well, honestly, if I had known that these light bars are almost impossible to replace, I guess they've had problems with them coming off before, I would have probably turned around to get it. Of course, I pulled over, I looked at it, and there was nothing really that I could do. It was already gone. And so I just went ahead and headed on up to Classic Firearms. Now, I arrived at Classic Firearms, went in, we had a great time. That tour of the surplus firearms was just fantastic at the warehouse, and it was a really fun video to do. So I packed up, got ready to leave, and as I was coming to a crossroad, and I should have turned to the left, but my GPS was saying I needed to go to the right. And so I just thought, hey, this may be a shorter way. So I turned to the right, I start heading out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, this was just way out in the boondocks. And I'm driving, in fact, there are no houses, there's nothing, there's woods. It looked like they just cut a freeway through there. And so I'm driving along, and my GPS started going out. It would slow down, it would just buffer. And I mean, it would do that rolling thing. And sometimes all of a sudden I'd come up to the place to turn, and then it would kind of reconnect and I'd be able to turn. And so, you know, this went on for a while. Unfortunately, my phone started to die. And it was when I had my earlier phone. I've got a new iPhone now, but it was an iPhone 6S, and the connection point, I'd have to hold it a certain way to allow it to charge. Now, I know you Android users don't have this problem, but on my iPhone, here's my little charging piece. Putting it in, I was having to actually press it up to get it to charge. I mean, it was a really crazy. I guess the connection, it was again an older phone, and so it had just, I guess, worn out, you know. So that is one thing that you got to be careful of, because again, technology can fail in a number of different ways, and if we're too dependent on it, we need to have backups. And I was down to like 10%. Out in the middle of nowhere, my GPS was already acting up, and my phone was about to die. So I'm driving down the road, I'm holding onto my phone with a connection pressed into the phone so it would continue to charge. And then after a while I'd look down, and because it wasn't held exactly how it needed to be held, it wasn't even charging part of the time. And so here I am, I'm driving along, I'm not really sure where in the world I'm going. And again, it was not like there were any stores to even stop and ask. But it was giving me just enough to where I just kind of kept going. Finally, I got to a certain point, and the GPS just wasn't working right, and my phone was dying. And then I remembered I had a map in my bug out bag in the back of the vehicle. Now I said bug out bag, but this is actually just one of my travel bags. Open this up, and I've shown this before, but I keep a map of the whole general area right here in this little sleeve. And I'm gonna tell you guys, you need to have a map in your vehicle, because you never know, obviously, what happened to me, but other things can happen as well. Now, I've said this before, but I'm really passionate about saying this now. Having a good map could be a lifesaver. Guys, we're so dependent on GPS. And we're not talking necessarily about a SHTF situation, but then you definitely would need a good map. If you don't have cell service, you're not gonna be able to use that GPS. This is gonna be a lifesaver. And sure, you can ask directions, but most of them use GPS as well, and they can't even tell you how to get to anywhere. Now, obviously, I had my car and I had a car charger, but I also keep a battery backup as well. And then also the cables to be able to plug this into my phone. This is one of the dark energy chargers. These are excellent. So finally, I came into a town and I pulled into a CVS, ran in and got a new charging cable just to see if that would work better, and actually it did. But I was able to use it. Make sure that you have good connections, make sure that your phone is up to date. It was funny because I was already due to change my phone. I just waited. Guys, when I got back, I got that phone exchanged immediately. This is something that you've got to keep up with. You know, it's part of your maintenance, part of keeping up with things, whether it's your bug out bag, whether it's the tools that are in your vehicle. I keep paracord in my vehicles anyway, because you know, you never know. But what I really could have used is some duct tape or 100-mile-an-hour tape, and I just didn't have it. I had it in my truck, didn't have it in my Hummer. And then of course all the other, I keep a box in with all these different essentials for travel. Not necessarily my go bag or my bug out bag, but this is just specifically for the automobile. So to continue the story though, I was running really low on gas as well. The funny thing is, if I would have turned to the left coming out of Classic Firearms, I would have been right in the middle of Charlotte, and there were gas stations, there were businesses. I mean, it was everything right there where I could have gotten to it. Turning the other direction led me just into an area that was pretty much, you know, just not inhabited that much. And of course there were plenty of houses and things on the way. But when things started getting critical, there was nothing to be found. And isn't that the way it goes? You know, Murphy's Law is what it is. The great news is I finally got to I-85, which that's what I was looking for, and then the rest was easy. So guys, the takeaway here is to make sure that you are prepared when you're traveling. You know, having those things, not necessarily, again, an SHTF situation, but things to repair your vehicle. Whether it's, you know, things like paracord. I mean, I just always keep paracord in my vehicle. I usually keep duct tape, and that would have been a much better solution, and I would probably still have my light bar otherwise. But then, you know, the map, that was a big one. And a lot of times we just don't think about it because we have our GPS. Guys, don't depend on technology. You know, it's great to have it. It's wonderful. We can use it for so many things. But if you get too dependent on it, you're going to find yourself lacking when things go down. And they have, and they could possibly really go down. And of course, that has a lot to do with why we do what we do, being prepared and being ready for survival. So guys, it's not always a complete disaster. It's not always SHTF. It could be a personal bad day, where if you just had a few things, you could have made it a much better day. Was my life in danger? Was I really, in danger of getting lost? No, not really. I could have finally found my way, but it was a lot easier with having the right tools. And as this day would end up, being at CVS, when I came out, somebody backed up and hit the bumper of my Hummer, and of course just left. But it was just one of those days. Thank goodness, once I got on the freeway, I got home with no other issues. And on a side note, guys, there are other things like keeping extra batteries with your flashlight, having that charger. One thing that was kind of funny is we were down at the beach a couple of weeks ago. My wife, we were getting ready to leave, and the car wouldn't start. She always keeps a pair of jumper cables in the back of her Expedition, and for some reason, because of all the packing of stuff, they'd been taken out. And so we ended up borrowing some jumper cables, and then on the way home we stopped and picked up a really nice set of jumper cables. But guys, those little things, sometimes they can get laid out. It's one of the things about your bug out bag or your go bag. Make sure you don't rob from your bag, because it's so easy to do. You need something, you pull it out. If you're putting it in your go bag or your bug out bag, get an extra set for everyday use and keep that bag well supplied. Because guys, chances are you're gonna need stuff in there sooner or later. Guys, if you take your bag out of your vehicle like I just did, and I was getting ready to go into my shop, put it back. And guys, I recently did a review of the setup that I have in my vehicle. Of course, I have my bag. I have a medical kit, and this is one of the AMP3 outfitters. This is totally, you can get through anything. Clinic in a roll. I have my boots with socks because a lot of times I'm wearing flip-flops or shoes that are not really up to a serious task. And also emergency supplies that I keep in here in case I ever need it. This was not in my vehicle when I went on that trip, because otherwise I would have used this duct tape. But again, guys, if you pull anything out of here, put it back. And of course, here in my back, this is my security bag. And guys, as I always say, improvise to survive. Have the tools you need to be able to do that improvising. If you're serious about prepping and survival, check out Survival Dispatch Insider. It is one of the best resources on the web. I upload one video a week that's exclusive to the Survival Dispatch Insider. So I'll have a link down below in the description, and it's well worth checking out. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. Pulled it loose if I'm stuck off the road and while I'm on the road. Now obviously it didn't hold, and all of a sudden I heard this loud slap. Have the tools you need to do those improvisations. You need to do an improvisation.